Whakataka tahau ki te uru, whakataka tahau ki te taonga, ki me kina kina, ki uta, ki mātaratara, ki tai. Ihi aha, te atakura, ki tio, i huka, i hauhunga, homi e, hui e, tā ki e.
Wira ki te raki, he tuhi raki, he tuhi raki. Wira ki te papa, he whaunuku, he whaunuku. Ka tukuna tai koe ki te pau tere raki, ka tahu kumia, ka tahu whakairo. Ka honu atu ai koe ki te po e, tifa tifa te po, tifa tifa te o. Kere kere te po, kere kere te o. Tako tako te po, tako tako te o, ka haere. Ka haere koe ki te po e, o ti atu ai e, taki ai e, taki ai e. Kia koe te perita. Haere atu rā e te whaia. E te hā kui, o wairewa o pōranga hau. Moi mai rā, o ki mai. Kaore mātou wari tia koe te whaia. O te kaha, o te mahi, mo te whenua, o te tai au. Haere ki o mātua, e tai tātari ana mō hau, e te taua, e te whaia, moi mai, o ki mai, tiraha, whakatā. Atu no tātou, no rātou kia rātou, tātou kia tātou, no reira tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou, a tēnā tata katoa, nei ratu mihi kia koutou, ngā murihiri, ngā takata, ngā kuri, i haramai, tēnei rā, mo tēnei hui, i te rā nei, engari, ko hoki te maumahara, te mahi a Benita, mo Wairewa Runaka, mo tōna kaha, ki tēnei ruma, i whawhoi, mo Wairewa, mo te whenua, me Papatūnuku hoki. A kia ora tātou, just welcome you around here today, just acknowledging the loss of Benita Wakefield, who worked on our climate change strategy, who worked on sitting here on the table of Wairewa, on Whaihiringa, Toroputuia. Unfortunately, she lost her fight and has passed on yesterday. So just acknowledging her mahi for Wairewa and also Environment Canterbury. Nō reira tēnā koutou, a tēnā tata katoa.
Yeah, kia ora, Ian, thank you for that. And maybe towards the end there we'll give others opportunity to speak of the work that Benita did, because it is it was quite welcomed, and I can tell by the emotion in your voice that it means a lot to you. So thank you for that. We have apologies, excuse me, today from Councillor Dion Swiggs, who's attending a young elected members LGNZ hui, and from Councillor Ian McKenzie, who's in Wellington. No conflicts of interest. Item 3, public forums and deputations. We have 2 public forums today, one from Peter Langlands and on the 4-wheel drive distributed birds, and the other one from Nick Stoneman, and we'll be speaking on dogs on buses. So welcome to you both, Nick, and welcome to you, Peter. Peter, you're up first. So if you could come to the table, and I think if they showed you how to use the buttons and things like that, Peter, well, Craig will help. Craig may even sit there with you and help you. Yes,
That one, so that's great.
I just wanted to acknowledge that my partner is on the committee of the Combined 4-Wheel Drive Club. Okay, just wanted to say that. However, they have a conservation focus on that group.
You've got 10 minutes. A bell will ring at 9, and then after that there'll be questions from councillors around clarification of what you've said, and then we will do a recommendation on your deputation to us. So when you're ready.
Kia ora, thank you very much for the opportunity to kōrero about this issue. Yes, I'm very concerned about what took place with Crate Day on the 2nd of December. It was really set a new precedent as far as disturbance on a braided river environment, and I think it really brought things to a head. Basically, we had a very large group of 4-wheel drives congregate on a part of the Ashley River and drive along a length of it. in the process destroying 4 black-fronted tern nests, taurapure, which is a nationally threatened species of braided river bird, and the second highest threat ranking in the DOC classification system. Also, interestingly, a species in which ECAN has spent over $500,000 in protecting in the Clarence River system, as well as DOC spending millions of dollars of Project River Recovery in the Mackenzie. So this is to some extent a Tonga species. It's a species of braided river bird, which is threatened. The Ashley River is a very significant site. It's close to Christchurch. There's an active river care group that's been looking after the birds on the river for the last 20 years. Over that time, the black-fronted tern population has just very slightly increased through extensive predator control, education work on 4-wheel drives, and human disturbance. The real fundamental issue, though, is what took place is a real slap in the face, not only to ECAN, to DOC, but also to the New Zealand Police. A large contingent of highly modified 4-wheel drives went onto the river above the Rangiora Bridge and above the Okuku River through the tern colonies. A lot of these vehicles were unmarked without license plate showing, which I understand under Transport Act is an offence. And yeah, they went through areas where there were black-fronted tern colonies. There was also some indecent public exposure that took place as well that was documented. And unfortunately, my understanding is that no DOC staff or police were actually on the riverbed where these alleged offences took place because of health and safety issues. So a lot of the evidence that has been gathered with what took place with this event has been done by a private individual within the Ashley River Care Group, and he shared all his videos and photos with me. And he's highly documented in extreme detail what took place, with exact GPS tracks of where the vehicles went, with their tracks and exactly where the nests are that were destroyed, including photographic evidence. Distressingly, one of the eggs smashed has a young chick in it that's close to hatching, so that's pretty upsetting as well. I guess for me, I went into quite a deep state of depression on Saturday, knowing the inevitability of this event taking place, having the police, Environment Canterbury and DOC there, in many ways, and still having this activity with laws being broken. And so I think it needs to be sorted out really quickly because it does set a precedent. It has I guess been fueled by social media. So you've got a large number of people going out in 4-wheel drives. So things have changed in a very dynamic way. So it does have implications, of course, for the other braided rivers in the Waitaha, Canterbury region, because otherwise you're going to get a displacement of vehicles into other areas like the Waimakariri or the Rakaia or the Huranui. There is a ban on vehicles on the Ashley River from State Highway 1 to the Okuku Junction, and that goes from the start of September to February. And I think that would be good if that was extended right up to the Ashley River Gorge, because that's where the tern nests were destroyed in the upper section. And also some fencing demarcation around centres where the birds are nesting as well. Could help, but primarily it really is just the requirement for a ban of vehicles on braided rivers during the braided river birds nesting season, because a lot of these species are globally endangered and absolutely dependent upon braided rivers for their survival. So yeah, those are really my key concerns. I guess I am upset that the police haven't laid any charges that I'm aware of yet, and the Department of Conservation are still working on it. And I've also requested that the Department of Conservation put out clear fact sheets for people when they are on rivers, to a process in which they can follow to get accurate evidence of any alleged offences under the Wildlife Act, so that it can be taken to court to allow prosecutions under the Wildlife Act. I'm very concerned about the amount of disturbance that takes place, and very few prosecutions have occurred. So in practical terms, many people see the Wildlife Act as being pretty meaningless, to be honest. So it really does come down now to active enforcement. But what I see, what took place, is really an act of public vandalism. It would be akin to me walking into the Christchurch Art Gallery after this meeting with a crate of beer and throwing beer bottles at each artwork. pulling my pants down, giving a brown eye to the receptionist and walking out. And I feel that the authorities and the public in Canterbury or Waitaha have been truly insulted by this event, and I think there need to be repercussions. And I think there's definitely enough evidence to identify the individuals involved in this event and for criminal proceedings to take place under the Transport and Wildlife Act. So yeah, kia ora, thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Councillors, Councillor Pauling, then Karakia, and then Robinson, and then Southwood.
Kia ora, Peter. Hey, thanks so much for bringing this to us. And I was thinking this morning, how does this relate to our meeting today? But the transport thing, of course, is where it comes in. And so I really thank you for bringing this here. That vehicle ban on the river, who is that set by, and who's that enforced by? Do you know, or do we know? Do our staff know?
I believe it is Environment Kids.
It is. Cool. Sorry, just push a button.
Sorry. Yes, my understanding is Environment Canterbury have administration of the river from from the estuary up to the Okuka confluence, and then above the Okuka confluence, it's then dock administration up there. Yeah, kia ora, Craig.
You're suggesting an extension of that, so that would be the dock part of it that needs combined into the ECAN one?
Yes, that's correct, Craig, yes.
And I take the point about the prosecution stuff. That's not something obviously that ECAN can do, but really support that to go to dock and the police to do something about them. But the practical solutions for the future, I'm really interested in, and obviously it's much better than it was a few years back, like having dock and the police at least there, and our staff were there. I'm assuming. Do we know that?
Yes, that's correct, Craig. In association with dock and the police, but not actively on the riverbed itself.
That's a lesson learned for next time. Totally get the health and safety stuff though, so that has to be considered. But the idea of sort of fencing or maybe ribbon tape around those key nesting areas, do you think that's a possibility that could be looked at as well?
Yes, that would certainly be an option. Yep.
Ai mia kia koe Peter. As a member of Mana Whenua Tuahuriri, and also as a Ngaitohu councillor, Tuahuriri Runanga is actually under me as well. So thank you for bringing this to the council table. I just have two questions. The first one is, so at this stage, there is a ongoing police investigation. Is that what you're saying? Is that correct?
Yeah, Councillor Karakia. Yeah, no, my understanding is at this stage, from what I've seen, there is no active police investigation. That the police, to the best of my knowledge, this might not be the case, but to the best of my knowledge, have assessed the evidence and feel that there's no need for any prosecutions.
Just a comment, hence your comment around the Wildlife Act and all of that. Okay, thank you. The next question I've got is because about 4 weeks ago we had a hui, actually, I'm talking ECAN with the chair and myself, with and talking about the river, policing of the rivers, and police were there, DOC was there, ECAN, and also tangata tiaki officers from Ngāi Tuahuriri who actually called the meeting. So what you're saying actually is an extension of things that we need that are actually happening, but they're actually not happening because you've just identified it. So that gives us the opportunity to actually continue that. So my question is, this is not the first time this has happened, is it? Because we've seen it. Is that right? It's not the first time.
That's correct. It's an ongoing issue. It's pretty much continuous. actually, within the preceding days of this event taking place within the vehicle exclusion area, there was a photo of 3 quad bikes with a dog running free through a black fronted tern colony as well. So this has been a long-term disturbance issue on the river. That's why I feel just basically a total ban on 4-wheel drives or vehicles on the river for recreational purposes from 1st of September to 1st of February is really just the only option with enforcement as well.
Sorry, just final question is that with this this whole situation then, and with has there been any engagement with mana whenua, Ngāi Tuahuriri? Because when we look at this, if my memory serves me correctly, then it's actually crate day that this kind of thing happens. Is that right? It's
Yes, that's correct. Yes. Yep.
Given that you spoke at the start, Canterbury, are you happy to ask your clarification? Is your next up?
I just wanted a clarification on signage. It was more in general to probably staff. Because I've just looked online to the River Care group and the ECAN site, and it does actually say there's signage, and then there's extra signage for that particular day out on the actual gravel area. But I just would like clarification, as I have in previous years, asked for absolute location for the signage, because there's many access points to the river. So if we could get that, please, that would be great.
Thank you. Thanks, Peter. And just to say, your photographs, I know that you're an amazing photographer of birds, and I absolutely love seeing what you share online. And it really disappointing that it comes down to essentially advocates and the general public to try to police this. Like, that just seems astonishing, and people putting themselves at risk, really putting themselves at risk. I was going to ask about the nesting season. Am I right in thinking that's the 1st of September to the 1st of Feb, which you just mentioned? So that's the braided river bird nesting season. And then I know in the press there was talk of there was a 4x4 club president or someone who was asking their members, asking 4x4 drivers to be respectful, acknowledging the concerns about the wildlife. And obviously there hasn't, it looked like an absolute mess. Is there any work going on with that, with those 4x4 clubs who an ongoing conversation about actually what do we do? I mean, is it a minority who needs some social license removing and some, local community policing, for want of a better word? Is there any room to go down that sort of, getting communities to essentially step up and put right the odd few, or is this actually a majority that are going through and behaving really badly?
Yeah, kia ora, Vicky. Yeah, it's a very focused group of people that undertook these events on Saturday. A group primarily I organised through social media. A group of people that, to a certain extent, are quite rebellious and militant. A lot of anti-1080 people in it. So the vehicles they have are highly modified. So they put a lot of investment into the 4-wheel drives that they have, with roll bars, big oversized tyres. As I say, all the photos I saw of about 12 vehicles other than one showed no identification as far as license plates goes. So this is a group of people who really are extreme 4-wheel drivers, and they're a minority group that's organised through the Crate Day social media platform. The main 4-wheel drive clubs are quite scathing of what happened, and overall there is a lot of responsible 4-wheel drivers out there in 4-wheel drive activities. Also, there's a lot of scope for people to actually use their 4-wheel drives on these rivers outside of the birds breeding season. So from March to August is actually a relatively safe time to have these vehicles on the rivers. But this group, they went into the black-fronted tern colony where the protester was trying to keep them away. They were very antagonistic. They revved up their tyres, spraying lots of shingle into the air, which caused some of the nests to be destroyed. So this was very much a antagonistic sort. They were a very wound up group of people, and that's why I think I brought this issue up with Fish and Game as well as Forest and Bird, and also I'm going to be speaking to Radio New Zealand too about it. But it really does impact a lot on more responsible recreational river users, and that's where I feel it's certainly an impact. But it does appear to be a identifiable minority group of people who have broken the law in this case, and that's why I think swift action to identify them would be in the interests of a lot of river users.
Good, thank you, Peter, for coming in. And I'm just really impressed that you spoke for that time with no notes. So you've obviously got some passion in you about this. Like, this is eco-terrorism from my point of view, because I mean, if we haven't got the laws to follow through and do some of these things, then we need to think seriously about some of the things that are going on in society. So that's my point of view on that. Look, Peter, thank you again. Look, we'll put a motion up here so that we will close the loop with you, and we will get back to you about this. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. So this is moved by Craig and seconded by Councillor Karakia. So received the public forum from Peter regarding the four-wheel drive disturbance of Braidwood River. Advise reply to Peter as soon as possible. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against? That's carried. Thank you very much, Peter, for your time. All right, now we've got our next deputation is from Nick. Nick Stoneman, can you please come? We have 5 minutes. Sorry, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And Nick, a bell will sound after 9. Then we'll do questions, and then we'll do the motion for you, Nick. So when you're ready, you hit that button.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the proposal of dogs on buses in Christchurch. I haven't had a chance to really prepare for this presentation, but I'm sort of going to speak to how I can as both a public transport advocate and a member of the disability community. So primarily my experience around this is being a member of the disability sector and seeing guide dogs and hearing service dogs working on buses. I think that while Christchurch does need to consider it, I feel that it will be a breach of human rights if this does go through and we do allow household pets on our public transport for a number of reasons, and I'm not against it, but my concerns sit with the disability sector, and where my concerns sit that I've had several discussions with those in the sector, including friends who have service dogs, and they tell me that they've been discriminated against just very recently in the last few weeks and last few months with regards to Auckland Transport's operations around having household pets on their vehicles, that's buses and trains. Other members of the disability community have been discriminated against when they've been told that their service dog has to wear a muzzle. As far as I'm aware, the legislation does not require a service dog to wear a muzzle. And drivers not being trained to identify that a service dog is either blind or is either working for a blind citizen or a deaf citizen of New Zealand. There's been 5 instances in that in the last few months, and each time I hear about it, as a member of the disability sector, I get very upset because I'm hearing this discrimination happening, and I'm going, what can we do? There is a plan to speak to Auckland Transport, but I'm not privy to that just at the moment. So my concerns around this are that it shouldn't be an automatic right for household pets to travel on public transport in Christchurch. The reason I say this is that Christchurch does have a system where taxis have done it in the past, and it's flagged on drivers' licenses that they'll transport animals. This is not something that our public transport is set up for. The service dog bay on buses is presently set out quite clearly. It's an identified space. It needs to be prioritised that service dogs come first. They have the right to be there. They've been specifically trained. I'd have real concerns about the training methods for this and the identification of household pets. Is it going to be insisted that they're wearing muzzles when they travel? we go into a whole range of areas where there's potential that someone might reach out and try and pat the animal if they're not housebroken, or if they're not trained properly. There could be an incident where the driver could be bitten, fellow passenger could be bitten. So I guess where I'm sort of coming from on this is we already have a case, and I have not had a response from this. We have a case of discrimination with one company in Christchurch already. Unfortunately, it was never resolved. I never received a response, and the friend in the disability sector was discriminated against and felt really let down by this process. They congratulated the other company for stepping up and allowing their service dog on the vehicles, but unfortunately it was a black eye to Christchurch when this happened with this particular company. I guess where I'm sort of going to go with this is that while I'm hearing there is very high support for this, I would want really, really strict controls around it, and it has to be identified that if there is a service animal, and when I say service animal, it's a guide dog or a hearing dog, they are given priority over a household pet. There has to be a way that it has to be paid for, and I guess the household pet has to be either muzzled or in a cage. I am aware that Dunedin has tried this in the past, though Dunedin have indicated that it's not something they're going to carry through. And when they did it, it was only done as a trial on a public holiday, and it was not done with the local authorities' approval. It was done by the local Heritage Bus Organisation on Christmas Day, and it worked. But whether or not it would work here, I'd have concerns about if there's an incident on the bus and an animal, a household pet, has an incident on the bus, who cleans it up? The bus just can't be pulled off the road and swapped out, because it could be in the middle. It could be going from anywhere. It could be going from Brighton to Rolleston, and it may not be possible to get the bus swapped out before it gets to where it needs to be. The other point is that my reservations around this are that as I've said, I feel that service dogs, that guide dogs and hearing dogs need to be given priority, and protections have to be put in place for this.
Good, thank you, Nick. Question from Councillor Davies.
Just two questions. Thank you for raising this, Nick, and this thoughtful speech, particularly in those regards to the disability sector. It's really important we hear that perspective. Do you think it is a good policy to take out to the public for their views and their input into the shaping of it?
Yes, I think it should go out for consultation. That consultation has to include the disability sector, and the disability sector has to be given priority to speak first.
We get that input done well. The plan is, well put together. The regulations are clear. That your concerns could be managed.
Yes, I believe my concerns in the disability sector concerns will probably be sorted.
Others? Great.
Hey, thanks, Nick. Thanks for raising those issues. Look, I think no one would disagree with the rights of those service dogs to be looked after, and the people that they help. So I think it's pretty clear that that would be something that would need to be maintained. And so, like you said, they should come first, and those other controls. And I think that's what any policy that we would create would definitely need to take that into account. So thank you for that, and thanks for answering the questions that Joe gave too.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. And also you'll see that Councillor Davies has a notice of motion coming to us about dogs on buses. I think that if you can stay and listen to that, because that will give us the opportunity for councillors then to debate that and put their ideas on the table, other than asking you for clarity. We'll be able to give you some more information on that coming forward. Genevieve.
Thank you for coming in. I agree. Yeah, service dogs should be a priority, and it's not just for the hard of sight or hard of hearing. It's for other people that need them for epilepsy episodes or diabetic dogs, the likes. And there's quite different specific reasons and proximity to the person they have to sit as well. So they'll need sort of extra space and guidance around that. But also, like overseas, there's some really good models of where dogs on buses work. But I think it really needs clear design within the bus as well. And I don't like the word segregation, but it has to happen to some degree, where pets go in one spot and service dogs often sit up the front anyway. So very good deputation, and thank you for bringing it.
Good, thank you, Nick. Moved by, so there's the notice up here, Joe, thank you for getting in front of me. Receives the public forum from Nick Stoneman regarding dogs on buses, provide a reply to Nick Stoneman as soon as possible, as soon as practical, sorry. Moved by Councillor Davies and seconded by Councillor Robinson. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, that's carried. Thank you, Nick, for doing this. All right, now moving to item 5, extraordinary business. Now I'm going to insert my discretion an item at 8.6 because I think other people may want to talk about Benita Wakefield and her contribution to this council. So I'm going to put that in at 8.6 as a general business section for this council and there's councillors that want to say something. So that'll be 8.6. So that's my extraordinary business. So now we're moving to the notice of motion that's being brought to the council by Councillor Davies. Can I just remind councillors that the introduction of this, Joe, is like for 5 minutes. We'll be tolerant with you on that. You'll get an opportunity to then reply at the end. You can be the last speaker on this matter. And I think Councillor Burns, are you? I've agreed that you will film this. So, and it'll only be Councillor Davies that you're filming for his personal use. So if you get up and speak to it, Nick, Joe, if you can speak to this first and then move it at the end, we'll get a second and then we can have a discussion. All right.
In September, the Deputy Prime Minister said of his co-governor that the tail is wagging the dog before the dog's left the pound. Or the dog has left the pound. And David Seymour said frequently through the government negotiations that it was important that the bus was travelling in the right direction before the actors took their seats. I don't know what bus Seymour catches, but we here in Canterbury like to have our feet anchored and our bottoms seated before the driver leaves the bus stop. And many of us, not all, I note, many of us would also like a small space upon the bus floor for our four-legged best friends, our life companions, to travel with us. I wrote an email to Peter about this in regard to the regional public transport plan, and I got the following response. It's likely we would focus on pets on buses so that we don't appear discriminatory against other animals, and it might be that we consult on this. So I filed this notice of motion because to me and our community it's quite important that we do specify looking at dogs on buses. Yes, the pets generally, but a deeper dive into policy around size, a cage policy, a numbers policy, and certainly a muzzle policy will be welcome. Because as Nick noted, it is important we get this right, and we need to look at other jurisdictions around this. For example, Nottingham City Council, whereby the drivers use an app to scan the dog's microchip. If the dog's registered without any historic drama, they are welcome to travel. Finally, I want to speak to the notion around the development of transport policy in the region. I've read the Regional Transport Committee's plan later in the agenda. I'm generally supportive of it. I'm very glad to see the mention of passenger rail on page 88. But in terms of the plan in the notice of motion, I quote from the Land Transport Management Act. The purpose of a regional public transport plan is to provide
A means for encouraging regional councils, territorial authorities, and public transport operators to work together in developing public transport services and infrastructure. And B, an instrument for engaging with the public in the region on the design and operation of the public transport network. And finally, a regional council may not delegate the responsibility for adopting, varying, or renewing a regional public transport plan to a committee or other subordinate decision-making body, or a member or an officer or any other person. It's great that we develop this thing together with our territories, with other agencies. But today I want to see regional councillor involvement in these formulations, other than previous decisions and delegations. We want to be there too, in partnership with officers, with our community, with our mana whenua councillors, as the council, the Public Transport Authority, building this plan together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. I'll note that when you bring a motion, a notice of motion to a council like this, you are the only one that can change it. And while we await to get a seconder for your motion, then it can be changed. But once we have a seconder, then it sits where it is. So if you're comfortable with the words that you have in front of you, Councillor Davies, would you like to move? So we'll put this up here so that we understand what we're talking about. So that the Transport, Urban Development and Air Quality Committee, one, requests the staff in the Greater Christchurch Department include a policy regarding pets on buses and specifically dogs on buses in the draft regional public transport plan. Two, that these policies will be consulted on with the public through the RPTP, Regional Public Transport Plan, and Greater Christchurch Partnership-led hearings processes. So I've got a seconder for that. Seconded by Councillor Pauling. And normally that then gains a life of its own in terms of that motion. There are others, given the interest in this, are there others that would like to comment? We don't normally do this, but others like to comment. Councillor Edge.
Potentially conflicted, being a member of Christchurch Greater Christchurch Partnership, and I'm not on the hearing, but Councillor Southworth is as well.
Yeah, kia ora. Hey, thanks, Joe, for bringing this to council. And I remember the public forum we had as well. And it's good to see JJ back in the room and his mates. But yeah, and I thought then that it was a policy worthy of having a better look at. And so congratulate Joe on bringing this to council in such a way that it can be done through the regional public transport plan and get consultation and get worked out. That's what I think it needs. It needs a good working out about how it can work. Like Joe said about, you know, muzzles, cages, numbers. Also, as Nick has noted, the protection of service dogs and their identification and training and support for drivers. So I think that is really important that that's figured out as well. But I think it's worthy of consultation with the public. So that's why I'm supporting it. Thank you.
I'll make a comment before I go to, sorry, John.
I was also seeking support, I guess, with the proviso as such that we do represent that conversation from Nick that we've just heard, and so that the consultation is complete and wide ranging to understand the issues from all sides. But otherwise, yes, I would support it.
It's a question for you, Chair Scott. So is there enough this policy is enough time to be put into the plan?
Well, we'll from here, we'll take the advice in terms of the pathway for this. I'm pretty sure that we have a pathway. What this does is allows the opportunity, and I see the transport guys nodding down there, so I think we're right. I think we're in good space.
Okay. I'm not 100%. I'd support it, but the only reason I'll vote for it today is so that the voice that people talk about it. Me personally, I would vote no, but for this, I'm letting people know.
You'll get a motion.
you're letting the motion go, have an opportunity to be spoken to. Sure.
Right. If there are no others, we'll go back to you, Joe. You can have a final word on this. If you want to have a final word on this, you're happy who we've got to on this. I think it's a good outcome because I think it focuses now in terms of getting a pathway and moving forward with that. And I mean, there are some issues there. This is about, if we're widening the thing past service dogs, it's about drivers understanding what we're trying to do here. It's about, size of the dog, because I mean, I think that was mentioned when the deputation came to us originally, JJ. This whole thing about muzzles on dogs and signage on buses where dogs are allowed. What buses are they allowed on? What buses aren't? And what times can they travel? Because I think all those points were brought to us, which were all really quite sensible. So, look forward to getting this piece of work done. So thank you, Joe. So with no further ado, can we go to the motion that the Transport, Urban Development and Air Quality Committee 1 requests the staff of Greater Christchurch Partnership, yada, yada, yada. I've already read through that. So that the policy is consulted with through the public RPT and Greater Christchurch Partnership led hearings process. For that motion, all those in favour, please say aye. All those against, that's carried. So thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you, Councillor Davies. Thank you, JJ. Thank you, Dogs, for coming in and seeing us today. Thank you, Nick, for coming in. You're welcome to stay. We're not kicking you out by any means, but you want to leave your dogs behind. Thank you for that. So let's get to the more boring bits of what we have to do here today, which are the, so we'll move to number 7, 7.1, unconfirmed minutes, Transport Urban Development Committee. Are there any matters of accuracy in those minutes for that meeting date? If not, I'll need a mover and a seconder for this motion. Thank you, Councillor DJ. Did you nod? You did. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ward. Any discussion? There's no discussion. All those in favour, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. That motion is carried. 8.1, Transport, Urban Development and Air Quality Committee's resolution. So, Catherine, any issues on this? Catherine will handle those. Catherine, want to speak to that at all?
I think everything's looking green, so unless anyone's got any questions, we'll take it as.
Good thing to have as a green when you're talking about transport. So that's the motion. Yeah. Have a mover for that motion, please. Councillor Edge and Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Robinson, moved by Councillor Edge. Okay, all those in favour. Any discussion? All those in favour. Right, thank you. So 8.2. So this is Claire's not here, is she? Jess, but you're going to speak to this, Jess. We thought we might take a wee bit of time just to talk about the draft regional land transport plan, because the numbers got big from what it was 5.6, I think it was. It's gone up to 6.1 or something like that. And there's some very good reasoning in behind that. But I'll hand to you, Jess.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. So I'll just take time just to quickly outline a few things that we raised with the Regional Transport Committee last week when we took this through for approval for consultation. So the purpose of this report is to update the committee on the progress of the review of the Canterbury Regional Land Transport Plan. It provides the committee with the report considered by the RTC on Monday, the 27th of November, which includes the draft 2024 Canterbury RLTP that they approved for public consultation at that meeting. Just firstly, I'd like to just acknowledge the amount of work that's gone into this over the past sort of 18 months through our staff and here at Environment Canterbury as Secretariat for the RTC, in particular Claire Patterson, who has led this project. Unfortunately, she can't be here today. She's unwell post her leave that she had. But yes, huge amount of work from Claire and the team, and also from all of the transport officers group members across the region, from all the TAs, including Whakamutunga staff, and also work that we've done with the Ministry of Transport staff. So huge amount of work that's gone into it. It is a mid-term review. It's not a full review. We'll be undertaking a full review of the RLTP in 2027. And the RTC is responsible for developing this RLTP every 6 years and to complete a review before the end of the third year of the plan. The draft RLTP included in your agenda as a result of the midterm review, and as I said, the full review is scheduled for 2027. The scope of the midterm review has been focused on transport emissions, funding options, and the effectiveness of the plan for Māori. This has led to key amendments being made to the plan, including a clearer understanding of the way forward for Canterbury to reduce its transport emissions and clearer alignment of investment towards that. An assessment of affordability and the identification of the need for legislative and structural change to ensure key improvements are funded and delivered. And as the Chair just mentioned, there's some direction still coming through with the GPS on land transport, and we'll await further discussion and decisions around funding as well. And also the changes across the plan to be more effective for Māori. And there's a section in the draft RLTP that talks to the priorities of Manapena in that regard as well. While freight and resilience were out of scope for this plan review, they are emerging as bigger issues to be further considered for the full plan review by 2027. I note this is also a key focus of the South Island RTC Chairs Group, which Chair Scott and Councillor Edge sit on that group, and where there's a coordination around the regional chairs of the RTCs on some of those key issues that are also to be in the scope of the 27 review. The proposed changes to be made to the 2021 RLTP to become the 2024 RLTP are included in the agenda. So there's a table of amendments that have been made, so it's very clear. This draft plan is a significant step up from the 21 RLTP, totaling around $11 billion in investment across the region's transport network. This is double what was included in the 2021 plan. The reasons for this, and as Chair Scott just mentioned, the dollars in the draft RLTP are so much higher than the previous plan. We've had direction from the Ministry of Transport around including the full extent of the funding needed rather than just what's requested through the National Land Transport Fund. So we've had previously under the previous government the Climate Emissions Response Fund. We've also had NZ Up funding. We've had a range of other Crown opportunities for funding that have been now included in the draft RLTP. So you start to see the opportunities for that much bigger bid for funding for the region. So this draft RLTP provides the full picture of the funding required to deliver the outcomes we want for our region's transport system. That's a really key point to make as well, that it's not just necessarily what the government wants, it's actually our story, our region's picture of transport funding that we require and the programs within that. There've also been some significant cost escalations, and I don't need to tell this council that they're well aware of the cost escalations in the transport sector, and as we run the public transport system as well. And this is as a result of inflation and other significant costs. And there's also significant investments proposed over the next 10 years, particularly things like the mass rapid transit system here in Greater Christchurch, Second Ashburton Bridge, the Woodend Bypass. So there's some quite significant, regionally significant activities. PT Futures, this council is also a contributor to as well. Using the council's 21 LTP figures in the draft 2024 GPS activity classes, the plan is deemed affordable and feasible, but there is that significant funding gap, depending on the funding decisions that are made by the incoming government. I've just mentioned some of those other programs of work. The objectives, just to sort of run through the plan itself, the objectives of the draft plan focus on maintenance, resilience, emissions, growth, safety and freight, and this is carried over from the previous RLTP, with headline targets remaining around safety, emissions reduction and freight. The investment priorities of the draft plan in priority order focus on road maintenance, managing risks around extreme events, developing public and active transport networks, implementing safer systems and integrating land, sea and air freight systems. The policies in the plan have been expanded now, including broader wellbeing and economic development considerations. The key transport improvements proposed in the draft RLTP will help achieve the changes sought in Canterbury's transport network, including better bridges for key South Island network connections, public transport services in Greater Christchurch, Timaru, and potentially other places such as Ashburton, significant safety improvements in Woodend, Hornby, and around schools, and freight efficiency improvements in Washite, Littleton, and across the state highway network. The message for transport emissions reduction in Canterbury is clear, with multiple changes proposed across the plan to reflect the scale and pace of change required to transition to a zero emission transport system. The draft plan has also sought to increase the effectiveness of the plan for Māori. Mana whenua expectations and priorities are now outlined in the plan, as I said earlier, with the Te Pai Mahutanga framework applied and relevant legislation and policies added to the plan. Staff acknowledge that this is only a step. This is a step in the right direction, with further opportunities through the full review of the RLTP in 2027 to continue to make the plan more effective for Māori. And as noted earlier, the RTC approved the draft RLTP included in your agenda. There were some amendments that were proposed by Waimakariri District Council and by Whakamutunga, which have been included as attachments in the papers today. The key next steps in the plan review process include the following. So the draft plan will be finalised with the amendments that were tabled at the RTC meeting. Public consultation on the draft plan will run from 26 January to 26 February of next year, with hearings and deliberations held in March. The final RLTP will be tabled for approval by the RTC in April and then for adoption by this council in May. And finally, the final RLTP will be sent to Whakamutunga before the 30 June deadline, as per the legislative requirements. So through you, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to take the rest of the report as read and answer any questions that the councillors may have.
A lot to take in here because of the way these things are put together, and outcomes are really dependent on the National Land Transport Fund, how much money is in that. And we've been told time and time again, the last 3 years, that there's no money in it. So it'll be interesting to see where this government gets to. So that'll be a ministerial discussion that we'll have as soon as we can. And then the next thing that's really, really important is the government policy statement in terms of how they want to reprioritise spending. And the interesting thing is that, you know, that's not instantaneous, because there are work programs that the last government have done that take time to run out. That money needs to go to those things, and that's the way it usually works. And then when you look at these issues that we've got that make up $10.1 billion, each of those issues, single issues, has to have a business case prepared for them. It gets priority by the Regional Transport Committee and then gets presented to Whakamutunga and goes to the Whakamutunga board in terms of being signed off. The process around doing that is that each TA has a transport officer working within them. So this really is the transport officer's plan, which we're responsible for, but it's their advice, guided by mayors and others, myself and others, about how do we get to where we are. So there's a lot of people involved in this, and then Whakamutunga front and centre at it. So understanding actually how that pyramid works until you get the National Land Transport Fund can unlock some of the vagaries about what we're trying to do here. Look, that's done, Gigi, by what you've done. Just done them.
Through Mr. Chair, the GPS on land transport, we're expecting hopefully early next year, February, March, around that time, for a draft GPS to land, so that we can, for public consultation, hopefully, so that we can input into that. So that'll be building off the previous version that we've brought to this council, and that'll influence to a degree where we take the draft RLTP as well. We'll note there's some delays in the NLTP as well, the National Land Transport Plan, through to September. Changes in government, GPS as well.
So just noting that the recommendations there are really a hierarchy of things in terms of the consultation process and the draft document that's going out for that. Someone would like to move? Thanks, Grant. Second by Claire. Any further discussion on that? Yes, Joe.
So was there there's not an amendment from Christchurch City around the Pages Road Bridge renewal?
Mr. Chair, so I'm not sure which page it is, there's a regionally significant activities list of activities proposed by the relevant territorial authorities and Whakamutunga. Mayor Major did raise that at the Regional Transport Committee last week. The Transport Officers Group, as Chair Scott just mentioned, has used the investment priorities and weightings within the draft RLTP to then size the regionally significant program and to prioritise all of those activities within. The activities list that you see in the plan is where those weightings and those investment priorities have landed the Pages Road Bridge as a resilience project for Christchurch. There was one change made previously to align to the GPS in terms of the funding, and that was for the Wood End bypass. That was requested by Mayor Gordon from Waimakariri District Council, and that elevated that project up to number 3. That was the alignment being to the draft GPS at the time. The list is the list, and the advice that we've had from Whakamutunga is that it doesn't stop certain activities on that list going ahead of others. It is just our regionally prioritised list. So if there is available funding from the government in particular for some of those projects where there's potentially co-investment, those projects may go ahead of others. And there's obviously a huge process to unfold on many of those different projects within the list.
Yeah, because from my understanding, that's fully funded by Christchurch City. So if they determine that that is a territorially significant project, civil defence reasons, they can bring that forward.
In terms, Mr. Chair, they can do that. Yep. I'm not sure about the funding, sorry, in terms of the 100%, but certainly Christchurch City Council will be managing that through their own long-term plan processes and the dollars associated with that and balancing that with all of the other transport program activities that they've got to manage as well. And apologies in terms of the funding aspects, but if that's requiring any Whakamutunga funding, that would have to go through in the bids for the National Land Transport Plan funding as well.
I think it's worth noting here that Christchurch City has got a lot of transport officers. Their advice has been reflected in the plan, and the mayor's questioned that rather than questioning us. We didn't put it in there. Their transport officers put it in there. So it's not something that we're leaving out or putting in. We don't get that opportunity to do that too much.
Yeah, just emphasise that the investment priorities and the weightings that were discussed with the Regional Transport Committee and agreed that was what was used in the prioritisation exercise by the transport officers, which then produced the list that we do have in front of you.
Yeah, and that's not always agreeable to mayors sometimes. And so the ranking on some of those projects, especially some of the bigger ones that mayors are hanging their hats on, they still have to go through a business case. They still have to go through that. They're then ranked by the rankings that the Regional Transport Committee, which are the mayors, after all, have agreed upon. And sometimes when their projects don't pop out in the right place, they get a bit angsty about it. The point about that also is that it's a list. It's prioritised by us. But if Whakamutunga board agreed to say, no, we're going to do number 15, then number 15 can go to the top. It's just our ranking. It's our advice.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, as part of the draft GPS that may come out next year as well, some of those activities that were identified in the current draft GPS from the previous government may be different again. So where that Crown funding and other opportunities for funding may come from as well might influence different projects happening at different times. But we don't know what that may look like just yet.
Very measured and level-headed committee. Ron, did you want to say something?
I just briefly, yeah, it's an interesting process and dynamic in the room when the order and assessment takes place. But it's highly objective, and the transport officers group do a great job and explaining the rankings, the weightings, and the measures that they've taken to actually come up with the list. Obviously, there's a bit of debate that changes things a little bit, but as Chair says, ultimately the National Land Transport Fund will kind of come out of the GPS direction, and things will go from there. But I just wanted to pick up on the report itself, or the plan itself. Is really a really good plan. It gives them some good narratives about various things that have been considered for the public to have a look at. And I just wanted to comment on the joint statement from the South Island Regional Transport Committee chairs. Just a couple of things there. The group seeks to significantly improve transport outcomes to, from, and within the South Island through stronger interregional collaboration and integration. And we want to be seen by central government as a group of over 1.2 million people with common aspirations for our transport system. And one of the priority areas for the South Island Regional Committee is advocacy for transportation in the South Island, including tracking how the National Land Transport Fund is being allocated across the country. Are we getting our fair share? At the moment, we haven't been. And the 11 billion that's suggested in this plan also not only deals with a 10-year plan, but it indicates some projects forward thinking as well, to make sure that the boards and the government know that there are things on the horizon, if you like, coming forward, because these things take a long time in the planning process, the business cases, the design, construction, you know, and it's really good. But I think as you suggested on I think it's the 10-year transport priorities are outlined on that page 163, with the investment priorities clearly marked. So it's a good guidance, and people can clearly see how that's come about. So we'll be looking forward to a really healthy GPS that sits favourably with this plan, and gives the South Island a little bit more kudos in its transportation planning across all the things that we need to consider, in terms of resilience, in terms of public transport, active transport, mode shift, rail as well, those sorts of things. So it's good to see, and it's good to get it out there, and it's good for the government to have it early on.
Grant, I'll take that. That's your space as the mover of that motion. Councillor Mackay is the seconder of that motion. Do you want to say anything? Okay, all right. So I'll put that motion to you as on the board there. Obviously didn't, but go ahead.
Sorry, I appreciate that now. But sorry. Yeah, I just well, two questions. First one is in the sort of preamble to the actual attachment of the transport document, the draft document in its whole. There's mention of, sorry, let me find my place here. So under reducing transport emissions 20 and paragraph 26, but onto the subsequent page. So hard to see what page number it is, but because it's it's overrun on my screen. I think it's page 27. At the top, there's two bullet points which are towards the bottom of paragraph 26, and it mentions that the draft GPS 2024 seeks infrastructure changes to follow demand changes rather than lead it. And I'm just wondering, does that, like, are we going to get where we need to go in terms of emissions reduction if we're expecting demand to lead us where we ultimately want to go? Like, how satisfactory is that as a mechanism? Surely we should be leading, but what's your
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think that's the reflection of the previous GPS, and where the new government's going is very much an infrastructure-led government focus. So I think we'll see something quite different in the next GPS that we see hopefully early next year.
And then paragraph 34, there's mention about how much of that 11.2 is maintaining the current infrastructure. And it says it's about 60% of the programme, and that's the same as what it was previous, like in the previous figures, and it refers to 2021. And looking back to the 2021 figures, 60% of that would be 3.3 billion, and the 60% of that 11.2 is 6.7 billion. So it's a doubling of the maintenance costs. So is that reflecting catching up on maintenance that hasn't been done? I know there's a collection of things, but or is it how much of that is to do with like greater use of the network, or what are the factors that play into that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, all of the above. There's been an underspend in the road maintenance and renewal space, and underinvestment, significant underinvestment over time, and this is a catch up in that respect. That's something that has definitely been reflected through the RTC chairs, through the RTC committee itself. From the mayors, that they require further funding to support the maintenance and renewals. So you've seen that program get bigger over time, because we're essentially playing catch up in that regard.
Sorry about that. I didn't catch your eye, but I'll look at catching your eye next time. So the recommendations there moved by Councillor Edge, second by Councillor Mackay. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, carried. That's carried, thank you. Q1 work program update, and Jess, that's you again. To me, it looks like it's going on pretty good.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So Stuart's going to join me at the table here, just in terms of the public transport aspects of this. But yeah, the purpose of this is to update the committee on the progress of the work within this portfolio. This Q1 update has already been through the Audit, Finance and Risk Committee back in the last month. Just note that all of the targets are on track for achievement at this point in time, and apologies for the track changes that have been included on a couple of the pages in the attachments, but everything's on track in that respect. Stuart's here in terms of the PT performance dashboard as well, so if there's any questions from councillors, happy to answer those. I note that Paul Hopwood and Brian Reeves are also online for any questions around the air quality aspects of the portfolio as well.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. So, questions? Genevieve?
Just with regards to the spreadsheeting thing, I feel a couple of meetings ago I requested information on the near misses, as did Councillor Southworth, I'm pretty sure. The near misses with incidents. We just wanted a little bit more information on what those incidents could be categorised as, because considering there's like 20 bus incidents that come under the near miss, what were they? Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's some description on those, please.
So yeah, I can bring some more detail on specifically what those near miss incidents were to our next committee meeting.
I'll just note also that under 12 bullet point 2, December 2023, early February 2024, Whakamutunga Karakia Committee reference. We're not too sure about this government in terms of Whakamutunga Karakia Committee, or are we? Right. Question to you.
You mean, is it still going to be don't know on that one, but I presume until there's some sort of change that it will carry on. It's certainly at this stage programmed to deliver or present the final spatial plan on the 16th of February. I think that's the date. to the committee?
Through Mr. Chair, so the Greater Christchurch Partnership staff are looking to take the spatial plan through on the 16th of February to the Greater Christchurch Partnership. Not quite sure about the Whakawhanake Kāinga Committee status at this point in time. Our council will be looking to adopt the spatial plan on the 20th of March council meeting.
So for those not aware, the committee there's 2 ministers in the room, and we're not too sure of the commitment of this government to that committee. So that's my point. Yeah. All right. Right.
Just while we're on that particular item, page 12, the hearing process has been completed. A final report is being drafted. And there are a few things now on the website that people can go and have a look at, including the minutes of the hearing panel, and also the deliberations are on YouTube if people want to look at those things. But the actual report is just a little way off.
Right. Okay. I think we'll put that recommendation up there. It's a good dashboard. Yes. Someone like to move that, Grant, and seconded by Mihi. Moved by Councillor Edge and seconded by Councillor Southworth. Any further discussion on that? No further discussion. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against? That's carried. So, Stuart, 8.4, the fair trial, early insights. Stuart, we're in your hands. Stuart. Especially online.
Got to go to. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have provided some early insights to the fair trial that commenced on the 1st of July this year. Councillor Paul last year approved a 2-year fair trial, which was delayed in its implementation because of the national 50% fares concession, which concluded on the 30th of June. So we implemented our fair trial from the 1st of July. So we've got 4 months worth of data in the report that you have in front of you, noting that only 2 of those months had the full implementation of all of the concessions in the fair trial. So the data we have is a little bit limited, but it's useful to get some early insights from that information. I'd also like to introduce some new information this morning in a couple of slides I'm going to show you, which gives you an update at a high level of how November tracked, noting that the report you have only goes up to October, the time it was written, but we now have the sort of total numbers for November. So I'll just run through those briefly, and then we'll carry on from there. So to summarise, for November, we saw a 10% uplift compared to the pre-COVID equivalent month. If you recall from the report for October, it was 9%. So we're seeing continued growth in patronage against our pre-COVID baseline. If we compare to the previous fiscal year, we can see that we've had 28% uplift in patronage fiscal year to date. So that's July to November period this fiscal year compared to the July-November period last fiscal year. Selwyn, Waimakariri and Christchurch City have all experienced good growth in November. And for that month, we see Selwyn at 24% above pre-COVID baseline for November, Waimakariri at 25% and Christchurch City at 9% above pre-COVID numbers. So all very positive indicators at this early stage. I thought I'd spend a little bit of time just making sure I articulate well enough how we've calculated some of these numbers at a macro level. Because we're talking about a pre-COVID baseline and the first half of this calendar year versus the second half of this calendar year. So just to be clear what we're talking about, if we look at the pre-COVID equivalent period of time, the period from January to June, we had 6.7 million trips. And for this fiscal year, this calendar year, January to June 2023, 6.1 million trips. So our baseline reference point showed us that we were at 92% of pre-COVID numbers before the fair trial started, the first half of this calendar year. So comparing the second half of this calendar year to that reference point, i.e. July to October, and now you can see July to November, we see there has been an 11% shift, positive shift in patronage between the first half of the year and the second half. As we've noted in the report, there are a number of things that have happened in that period. We started the fair trial. We introduced the new 27 and 8 routes for increased frequency. The Orbiter returned to full frequency in July as the driver shortage was resolved. So a number of different things have occurred. And of course, the price of fuel is quite high. So all those things will be contributing to positive re-engagement with public transport in Greater Christchurch. We've also done some sort of forecasting scenarios to sort of give us a sense of where we might end up this fiscal year should this trend continue. And we've chosen 3 different scenarios: a high growth scenario, a medium growth scenario, and a low growth scenario, based on the 10% that we saw in November continuing, a more modest 6% average growth continuing through to June next year, and then a conservative 2% growth. And so you can see the numbers up there: 14.3 million for the high growth scenario, 13.9 for the medium growth scenario, and 13.6 for the conservative growth scenario. If we compare that to our pre-COVID baseline of 13.3 million, all scenarios tend to suggest that we will end the fiscal year with a positive growth outcome. In particular, the high growth scenario, if 10% continues on, that will result in the highest annual patronage since the earthquakes for Greater Christchurch, which is a really good outcome if we get to that point. So just to show you how that looks across the year, you can see the cumulative trend of patronage month on month based on those different scenarios. And I've just zoomed in, if you like, to the second half of the year where it's quite important. This shows the comparison to the previous fiscal year. So we could end up with 28% growth on the previous fiscal year, which is really good. So coming back to the report itself, one of the interesting things that we've seen in this early stage is most of this growth is coming from the adult users. Obviously, a lot of the concessions service adult users, but we've also seen a significant growth in non-concessioned adult travel, which is really encouraging. And you'll note in the paper also the uplift in MetroCard sales and the use of unique individual Metro cards on our network. The last thing I'll just comment on is as another sort of canary in the coal mine or litmus test reference point is the bus interchange. It's our biggest bus stop on our network, and we've seen 30% growth in the average daily passenger boardings in that facility in Q4. So I'll take the rest of the paper as read, and so Thomas and I are happy to answer any questions.
How much of this growth do we account for general population growth in the sub-region?
Look, we haven't done any of that detailed analysis. It's difficult to associate a specific population growth with patronage uplift. I mean, you could draw just a straight line conclusion that we have 3% growth in our population. We should see 3% growth in patronage. We haven't done that yet.
Interesting. There were some numbers the other day that we talked to. We've got a bit of GCP housing something, and something like 1,500 people a month coming to Canterbury. Whether they're all here or not, I don't know, but you know, so that's some generic figures there, but it would be interesting to know who's settling in the catchment of the PT services. Claire.
Through you, Chair. Thank you very much, Stuart, for the update. I mean, it is really pleasing to see. Obviously, still a lot of factors that are influencing, which makes it probably pretty hard for you to actually tell us how successful the flat fare and the low fares have contributed to this. So previously, when we made a decision about the length of the fare trial, it was 2 years. And I suppose I'm asking you to look at your crystal ball here. Do you still think that we're going to need that 2 years to inform us of a way forward around fares and flat fare? Because I am quite concerned about the low fare recovery at 12%, and maybe that really we as a council need to be having some information much earlier than in 2 years' time, maybe in another 4 or 5 months' time, to actually make better decisions around the long-term plan. So you may not be able to answer all that, but I mean, I'm just putting out there my real concerns about the fact that we have sort of got ourselves into a situation of a 2-year fare trial, and we're seeing some really good response. We're trying to tease out what's the enablers, what's the barriers, and what can we actually use to get better leverage in the long term.
We need to look at the time value of the $2 since when it went in to actually what's $2 worth now, because it's actually getting eroded through inflation and other things. So the time value of that money differs. One of the things that we would say, the mechanism that you'll have available when NTS comes in will be much simpler than a process that we would have to go through to try and get that stuff sorted out. So, you know, there's some stuff in front of us. Stuart.
Yes, just to add to that, so when we presented back in May about the half price fares, as part of the advice was that, so we saw that was a really positive change, but the $2 is quite a different proposition, and the numbers have shown that this is that's really just the last 5 months that we can review this particular activation on. So. Yeah, it does feel early days still to.
Yeah, if I could just add to that as well, it is interesting to note that for the first half of this year, January to June, we had 50% fares. And for the vast majority of our patrons who travel in Zone 1, over 90% of our customers, so Zone 1 customers, the 50% fares was cheaper than the current flat fare regime. If you weren't a concession holder, even if you were a concession holder, it was cheaper. So without any real data, we can surmise that the $2 flat fare approach is significantly simpler to consume and understand. And therefore people have much more certainty over what it's going to cost them to ride the bus than the previous 50% fares arrangement. Even though it was cheaper, it was confusing and difficult to engage with. Joining your comment to Councillor Davies' question about population growth, until we do any detailed community conversations and research, all we have is the raw data at the moment. And this, as Thomas has articulated, it's just not enough to get any real inferences. So our intention is to engage with our users, do some surveys, ask some questions to understand what's driven their use. Has their use increased? Is it because they've recently moved to Christchurch? Is it because of the fuel price? Is it because of the flat fares? Until we do that engagement, we're really not going to know. And so I doubt whether we'd have that information in time for the LTP conversation. But we do anticipate having more information sort of halfway through, 3/4 of the way through next year.
Thank you. Thanks. Just to that point you just made as well. No, we have a growing population, but we also have more people working from home. So that's another factor that just complicates the picture. But it's all very exciting to see. Just wondering, in terms of, obviously there's more Metro cards being sold, and presume that's because that's how you access these really good fares. In terms of proportionally, are we seeing that proportionally more of our passengers are using the Metro cards? Because I know we've obviously got more passengers and more trips on the bus, but is it, yeah, we're seeing a change in the proportion of those using Metro?
So we haven't dived into that detail yet. The cash usage seems to be remaining relatively constant, which suggests that proportionally the ratio of MetroCard users is not changing, even though there are more people. Yeah, but there's quite a few deep dive pieces of analysis we need to do when we have sufficient data to do it. Yeah.
So the annual Metro customer survey will be the best source of how many people are still have switched to MetroCard versus cash.
You sort of jumped to where my thinking was in the cash part, because that's obviously another conversation that's happening. So when is the that Metro user survey? When is that done, and when does the report come through?
It'll be March, April. We'll have it in field. So it'll be May, June that we'll have the results.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, really excited that we are seeing that growth. And whilst we can't make any real judgments, I look at Waimakariri and Selwyn and think about taking the zones down, the simplicity of $1 and $2 fares. I suspect are driving a lot more of that use, because we haven't necessarily seen the population growth in comparison to the city. So just excited that it's there. Recognise that at some point, yes, we will need to look at that fare box recovery. But I think for me, that's a conversation once we get the national ticketing in. I really want to see use bedded in before we start to add price back in. So, yeah, it's not all about the dollars. I mean, I'm a fine young socialist, using all these different outcomes I'm looking for, God forbid. But yeah, for me, getting it bedded in, getting it working, getting that use there, and then making the adjustments to balance things a little in time is, I guess, where I am. But I'm just really excited that, you know, sitting there and articulating, arguing for, and having this in place and seeing the outcomes is great. So yeah, thanks for the work. Yes, I shall be shot when I leave the building. Some buggers lining me up already.
Socialist ethics are really good, I think, John. But anyway, Stuart, just wondering, in terms of the increase in growth in the Christchurch City of 9%, do you know where that 9% has occurred? I'm thinking, has it the relationship between which core routes are they on, and is there a relationship with urban growth? So it's just that relationship. Is that something that you might look at?
So we don't have that insight at the moment, but it is something we could look at. What I can say is across our entire network, with the exception of 2 routes, every single route has seen positive growth occur on it.
Look, I'm really pleased for you, Stuart. It's been such a bloody uphill battle to get where we are now, so it's nice. I hope you enjoy that. Sorry. Oh, sorry.
I was going to answer it to say the rep review work we looked at as well, like a lot of that growth is in the west of Christchurch as population increases.
Hey, kia ora. Thanks so much. Yeah, like others, councillors have said, really good stuff. And I was just wondering about that. The daily and weekly caps have been pretty critical too, I reckon. Could you just explain them to us again? Because we improved them, didn't we? And can you just tell us what they are again? Just so I've got that in my head.
Yes, so the key change was the weekly cap moving from 10 paid trips down to 8 paid trips. So the really good customer story there is if you're a daily commuter Monday to Friday, you'll get Friday free. Before it was simply the weekends you would get free, which wasn't as appealing to people. So that's a story we've been embedding. It hasn't been the hero of the campaign, but it's one which we're going to keep on reinforcing.
And just to follow up, I mean, I agree with John, and it's really how this all links to how the NTS system will work, and you know, that decision about how do you do that. Do you keep flat fares in those zones, or do you go back to zones and tap on, tap off? So I'm really interested in that discussion when it comes. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, it will be interesting. So just reflecting on the fare capping, again, because we've got simplified fares, it's much easier to understand. Essentially, if you're a non-concession holder, the maximum fare for a week, all you can eat is $16. So it's a really easy number to understand and latch onto. As many rides as you like, $16 in a week. If you are a concession holder, as many rides as you like for $8, which is significantly better than we had before.
Thanks for your report. I'm always interested to see trends, and I'm a great advocate of the saying, you know, there's lies, damn lies, and then the statistics. You can read, you can present things in all sorts of manners. So I'm looking at your page there, relative patronage trends against pre-COVID. And whilst in relativity, yes, you were at 92% earlier in the year, 102% in the middle of the year, and sort of towards the end of the year, we're up at 103% of pre-COVID. But you could also sort of relate and say in that January to June period, we were down 548,000 passengers, about an 8% decrease. In the July-October period, we had an increase of 82,000 passengers, which is a 2% increase. And then again in July, November, we were up 194,000 passengers, a 3% increase. So my point is really, when you're using the relativity and saying 10% difference between January, June and July, October, it gives a sort of a warm feeling that we're doing well. But when you talk about the actual numbers and a percentage, it doesn't look as great as the 10%. So I'm pleased to see we're having positive trends, but there are a multitude of ways that data can be presented, and some of it looks quite good, others not as good as it may well convey. But overall, great to see things are improving.
As we enter the Christmas period, that's really grinchy, David.
I'm a great advocate of the multitude of ways you can present data, and to whatever advantage or disadvantage you may wish. So I'm just making the point, Mr. Chairman.
Just wanted to signal early because you always miss me, so I'm signaling to the next bit.
Oh, look, I just wanted to reference one of the other measures in the paper, because Councillor East's perspective was quite real, that statistics can be moulded or manipulated any way you like. And so we've tried to look at multiple different sources of information to corroborate our view of this 10% growth. And the one I'd refer you to is the average weekly boardings, which shows a 10% shift for 4,200 extra boardings on a weekday in July to October versus January to June, which is 10% extra people riding the bus. So we've tried to look at a number of different mechanisms to help us understand before and after.
My opinion on this is that this is a good news story. there's more people on buses than there were. We spent a lot of the first half of this year talking about, hey, how is this going to happen? And it has happened. We should just be reasonably comfortable with that. John?
Thanks, and I guess excited about the uplift. I recognise there's some challenges in Rolleston about numbers and peak travel and the like. Have we created a problem for ourselves, or are those things out there? I guess peak times and uplift. Do we have the resourcing to maintain the service, and are there challenges?
Yes, so in relation to Rolleston in particular, we know from our information that there is an increased occurrence of full loads coming out of Rolleston in the mornings in particular, and also in the afternoon school period going back to Rolleston, high loadings in some cases. Council might recall that you approved as part of this year's annual plan additional funding to address some peak services. And so we are currently working on adding more capacity to some of those services out of Rolleston and Lincoln to address those issues. So again, a response to the demand, I guess.
So the answer is we have the capability, resourcing to manage. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Stuart. I think we'll shift on if we can. That's the recommendation there, and it's a noting recommendation. Have I got someone that's prepared to do that? Thank you, Councillor Southworth. Seconded by Councillor Sunkel. Any further discussion on that issue? There's no further discussion. Well, you can say something.
Sorry, you were just, I'm trying to do this properly. I know we're supposed to do questions for clarity and then the discussion, but we get a bit muddled. Anyway, so just to say, it's really exciting to see. I know staff have worked incredibly hard on this, and this is really just the start. So we've done the fare stuff, we've brought down some of those prices, we've simplified it and so on. That's like the easy to do bit. We've got that underway, we've got some traction, we're seeing progress. Totally agree with Councillor Sunkel, absolutely bob on. We have to stick with where we're going and keep going on these gains. The bit that's really exciting is the public transport futures, and we're going to have that conversation through our LTP, where we know that the frequency of buses coming through this the routes, and we know that the reliability and all those are the critical things. But it's a combination of it. It's not silver. We've got that coming through, and when we get that, let's just see where we can go. Like, I'm really excited. We're gonna be all on public transport before we know it. Thank you.
Well said, Vicky. If there's any further comment, we'll take it. But otherwise, I'll put this before you that all those in favour say aye. All those against. That's carried. Thank you. So we're going to 8.5, which is the report from the chair. I'm taking that as read, and we'll move that. Seconded by Councillor Mackay. Any discussion on that? This is an opportunity for councillors to talk about some of the stuff that's in the chair's report. There is some detail in the chair's report around those issues. I'm more than comfortable to move on. If everyone is, all those in favour, please say aye. All those against, that's carried. Now, I've got a matter at 8.6 that was about giving councillors the opportunity to. Yeah. I'll get there. Yeah. Where were you, Ben?
I was about to do it and you weren't looking up. But thank you. I just wanted to just note that Dion, myself and Paul have continued to meet with staff on the dust and odour stuff, just so you know, and letters that we've done to both Te Whatu Order and Ministry for the Environment have gone out. Well, I've signed it, you're going to countersign it. And they've gone, and that's about just doing some requests to them to work with Te Whatu Order on getting some updated advice and research into the health impacts of dust in particular, and also to MFE around national guidance for setbacks for those dust generating and odour generating activities. So just noting that. And also, I just think that it comes from other discussions around when we do our next regional air plan update, which I think is 25, 26, just about getting, dust and odour into our clean air program, but more so just really reinforcing that message that we need to do that. And then around how do we catch up with sites where there may be dust and odour generated, but there's no consents in place for them, but it just happens as a course of that land use activity, and how we can have rules in our plan to catch up with that and help us, because at the moment some things fall through the gap. So just keen to raise that. So thank you.
I think there's some stuff happening in that area also that, as I alluded to, that joined up approach between Mana Ora, ourselves, and CCC, that some oversight on that stuff. We talked about, river pollution issues and health issues and dust issues and smell issues, those sorts of things. And so we're going to hopefully get that going again. Now, in order to do what we need, that I've expressed that we will do, we need to put that in motion so that we can. So thank you, Chair. Second it, please. Thank you, Craig. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, that's carried. Now, unfortunately, we've lost some people, but I'll hand over to you, Claire.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, just the sadness that I hear of Benita's passing just yesterday. I just really would like to acknowledge my relationship, particularly, and I think Environment Canterbury, with Benita through the Canterbury Water Management Strategy. And there will be somebody at the table that will have more of a knowledge around her length of time that she's involved with the Banks Peninsula Water Zone Committee as well. But yeah, I think probably my recollection of her probably goes back to the early 2010, 2011, right at the start of Canterbury Water Management Strategy. And I think she was one of the early people on the regional committee attending there as well. I had a great deal of time for her, and I think that it was set off when I found out that she actually, her family hailed from Prongaha, Central Hawke's Bay College, or Central Hawke's Bay. So yeah, we sort of had a familiarity and awareness. I really appreciated Vanita's real inquiring mind and intellect and research, and she had done some Massey University papers, a PhD I think, and done some work for Lincoln University. But she had a real interest in furthering particularly her hapu well-being, both across the social, cultural and environmental stuff. And I just think she was a very strong speaker for climate change as well. And that was probably one of the later instances where she got up and I think she actually presented here at council around that. Somebody might be able to help me around that. So yeah, she's the person that was really invested in the Canterbury Water Management Strategy, and both at the regional and the zone committee. So look, I just extend my sympathy to Councillor Cranwell, from the Waiwela Runanga, but yeah, a person that will be sadly missed.
Anyone else want to make comment? Great.
Sad to hear the news just this morning, and yeah, worked with Benita a little bit, but yeah, like Claire has said, her really recent involvement in our regional committee right up until it's been disbanded, zone committee work, and I also interacted with her over Ahuriri as well, where she supported the work there and the monitoring that we did around the wetland that Cam led the project there. So yeah, just lots of acknowledgement to her and her family and the whānau Wairera as well. So yeah. Thank
you. Yeah, really sad to hear this morning that she passed. it's really disappointing for me because we've been working. She was on the Selwyn Waihora Zone Committee. One of those people who really really passionate about water and the environment and what they're doing, and so spread herself across multiple different things. She left our zone committee for a period to go and work at Lincoln University lecturing, which was really exciting. And then she had just come back to us at the zone committee. Now she's always so passionate and so very clear in her thinking, like her values and what she you know, she'd just tell you straight what she thought. And that was really just for the short periods that she was on the zone committee that I'm on at Selwyn Waihora, really valued her input, and we're really disappointed that we won't be able to work.
I mean, yeah, just so I heard came in on Claire, you know, talking about Benita. You know, she ended up being the zone chair of Banks Peninsula. Yeah, but also, and yeah, when I was on Selwyn, she was on there. She took over from me from the Banks Peninsula Zone Committee. She was passionate. I mean, yeah, and Craig mentioned also Kaikoura. So when she did her masters, etc., on environmental health, that's what kind of got her into it. And then she went back up home and worked with Ngāti Kere and Pōrangahau, Ngāti Kahunungu, on a lot of the mahi up there. And then, you know, she came back and forth because, you know, she was a Wakefield, a Wekapere, also whakapapa to Onuku, so she would help over there as well. So she did a lot of work on those three marae. And then in the later years, living down at Birdling's Flat, really getting into into working around there, and just recently leading a program for us with NIWA on a 5-year study on climate change and the effects in and around the Wairua region. So she was doing a lot of interviews with Kaumātua and other things and collecting a lot of information. So it's quite, you know, I was only speaking to her a couple of weeks ago and I asked her how she was, and unfortunately, you know, I mean, she was stubborn and quite proud of who she was, and she said, "No, I'm good." And I said, do you need anything, or, you know, do you want me? And she goes, no, I'm fine. Just do this, Mihi. Hurry up. And yeah, and so the last bit of work a couple of weeks ago with her, and yeah, unfortunately, she had, you know, dialysis, and it, you know, stopped. Unfortunately, there was no progress for her. She couldn't get a transplant, so she just decided last week to turn it off, and her whānau came and got her. And so she passed away in Napier yesterday, and then she's going on to Rongo Mai Roa Marae tomorrow at Pōrangahau. So I'll be flying up tomorrow morning to take her on. Got it.
Awesome. So it'd be good if you could take our condolences to the family. We will write to them, and I've got a motion that says that we will put that in place. I knew been involved a bit like Claire since about 2010, so did come up against Benita and regional committee, and it's really good to know where people stand. And you were never uncertain about where she was, which is a great thing, you know, because that allows a reasonable debate about, well, where's the middle bit, you know. So, and that was always interesting for her. So, you know, 2010 to 2021, 22, that's a big commitment to this organisation in terms of that advice that she was supplying in, and she will be missed. Unfortunately, we seem to be losing a few people that have got that mana that we require to actually move forward. So, yeah, I won't say much more than that, but we will go through this process in terms of this. So I'd take it that you would move that recommendation that we do that. Yeah, and I think that you would second that, Councillor Pauling. So moved by Councillor Cranwell and seconded by Councillor Pauling that the delegates to the Chair of Advisory Academy responsible for drafting a letter to whānau of Benita Wakefield expressing the condolences of the council. And I think we should also add, and the massive amount of work that she has done to you know, to support the environment and to move us forward. Right. Okay. All right. All those in favour of that, please say aye. All those against, that's carried. Now, it's my intention that we're going to go into PX now, but I would like someone to move that we extend to the end of PX for this council period, because we have to start it. You know, we have to start. Yeah. So moved by. It's great that you came and get the words out. Moved by John and seconded by Craig. That we extend the period. That we extend the period to the end of the PX piece. So there we are. Someone, so we're moving a sector. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, carried. And now I need someone to move us into PX. Moved by Craig, seconded by John, that we move into public excluded. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, that's carried. So now we've returned to the main part of the meeting. The only thing left to do is to say that the next meeting of this committee will be on the 28th of February 2024. And I would ask Councillor Burns to finish us with a karakia.
Whakatau mai te wairua, whakawatia mai te hinenaro, whakarite mai te tinana, ki ngā hau I whā, tihei mauri ora.